I've made over $300,000 making video games, and in this video I want to break down the components of that number, the strategies that I use to achieve that number, and some vital tips that I've learned along the way. But before I dive into that, I want to briefly go over some of the different avenues and methodologies that I've seen game developers use to monetize their trade. So let me ask you this, when I talk about making money as a game developer, what comes into your mind? A lot of people will automatically jump to what I like to call the indie dream story. And the indie dream story is what happens when a solo game developer becomes an overnight success. These are the tales of individuals who spend time creating a game and then hit it big. Think of games like Vampire Survivors, Stardew Valley, or Flappy Bird. These are the games that seem to explode overnight and make the developers into multimillionaires. And that's kind of the nature of the beast. The games industry is a hit-driven industry. But being able to make a game that is that popular and successful, especially if you're a team of one person, is extremely difficult. Okay, so that's one method. The second method is what I like to call YouTuber game devs. These are the people who create YouTube videos as they're developing their games, and then their rising popularity on YouTube basically guarantees a successful launch when their game releases. Think of people like Danny, Thin Matrix, Pontypants. Now I like these kind of people because not only are they developing interesting games, but their personalities are really interesting too. And they provide a lot of value for the viewer by letting them get a sneak peek behind the scenes into their world of game development. Okay, this next monetization strategy that I've seen is what I like to call the game dev gurus. And these are the people who have taken their professional experience and successful game releases, and they have used that knowledge to create their own online classes and courses to sell to people. Think of people like Thomas Brush, David Whaley, and Jason Wyman. These guys have created and released successful games on all platforms, and they're focusing some of their attention on creating online courses to teach what they've learned in the process. And in some cases, they make way more money selling courses than they do selling games. In some cases, they make way more money selling games than they do selling courses. Okay, so this next category is what I like to call the asset creators group. And these are people who don't necessarily make their own games, but they make assets for games that they can sell to other game developers. And typically I think of these people as putting up their assets on the Unity asset store, but it could be any other platform store or their own website or whatever. Some of the people that fall into this category are Kenny and Cinti Studios, but it doesn't just have to be art assets. Programmers will often create plugins that make it easier for other game developers to implement certain systems into their game, like maybe a save system or an inventory system or things of that nature. Okay, so those are some of the major ways that I've seen game developers monetize their craft. But I took a different path from all these people. Let me tell you about my experience. So let's do a quiz to see if you can guess which avenue I took to make over $300,000. Do you think it was A, signing deals with publishers, B, releasing free mobile games with advertisements, C, creating NFTs, or D, live streaming my game development? I'll just give you 1 second to try and figure out which one you think it is. All right, let's see what the answer is. Drum roll, please. And the winner is none of these. So here's the actual breakdown of this big number. So the first one is from my Patreon. I recently created a Patreon account, and so far it has made me about $20. And I did actually release a few mobile games with ads, and that has made about $40 in ad revenue. And then we can also add in the ad revenue that I've made from this YouTube channel, which is about $40. But let me back up for a second, because the ad revenue for both my mobile games and for YouTube, neither of those have met the threshold to be able to withdraw any money, so I'm not even gonna count those because I can't access that money. And I probably never will for the mobile games. And the remaining money all comes from one source. I earned it by convincing someone else to pay me to help them build their games. Now, the traditional phrasing for this kind of business arrangement is having a job. Now, before you write me off, I want you to hear me out. Because most people want to be the overnight indie dev success story. They want to be on their own, creating one game completely by themselves, and wake up the next morning with millions of dollars in their bank account. But that's very hard, and it's just not realistic. I see it as being on the same tier as winning the lottery. But this, getting a job in the games industry, anybody can do that. Video games is now a $396 billion industry, and that means that there are so many jobs out there. The jobs are out there for the taking, but A lot of people want to be professional game developers, which means that those job openings are competitive, and job applications often get lost in the void and you never hear back from the employer. So let me tell you about my personal experience of getting a job in the games industry, both the challenges that I had to overcome and the one trick that made it much easier to land a job. Okay, so picture this. Let's go back a few years to a young and spry version of Thomas. He's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. He's optimistic about the world and just graduated college with a computer science degree. I got a job doing enterprise Java web development, and it wasn't great. I met some cool people, but overall, it wasn't my jam, and I eventually started to dread coming into work. And I'll skip the part where I had like a quarter-life crisis and started thinking deeply about the existential questions about what I wanted to do with my life, and we'll just fast forward to the point where I decided that I wanted to make video games. So I started with learning the relevant game dev related skills. That meant downloading Unity, going through tutorials, and learning some stuff about art, beginning to publish really small projects, and just seeing what was possible and how all these pieces fit together. And if you want to see in detail all of the projects that led to me getting a full-time job as a game developer, I made a video about every single project that I made leading up to that, so you can check that out. So during this time, I tried not to get stuck in tutorial hell. And for those who don't know, tutorial hell is a real place, and it's where you watch a tutorial and then you watch another tutorial and then you watch another tutorial, and you're following these people's instructions step by step, but you never progress beyond that and you never make something of your own. Tutorials are great in the beginning when you're starting out, but a lot of people get stuck there. And if you don't want to get stuck there, then my suggestion is to finish projects. And I actually made a video talking about the importance of finishing projects. So if you want to check out that video, you can get some practical tips about how to get your project to the finish line. So from there, I tried making some mobile games, and I attempted to monetize it, but it didn't really go that well. If you want to check out my video, I made a whole in-depth thing about how I made 3 mobile games and how much money I made during that process. Spoiler alert, it was $0, but I actually learned a lot about the Android and iOS platforms and the mobile market as a whole. I also sent my mobile games to some of the top mobile publishers of the time, and they were able to run some social media ads to do some user acquisition and measure like click-through rate and retention rate and all of this different stuff. None of my projects were viable enough to get formally published by them, but it was a really good learning experience for me. The next step that I took was creating an online portfolio that showed off some of the more polished projects that I was putting together. And this was a really important step for me, because being able to show a potential employer, hey, these are the projects that I've worked on, it's crucial because it shows a potential employer what you're capable of, gives you something to show them even if you don't have industry experience yet. They weren't super impressive, but they were finished, which says a lot. Then came the really important life-changing part, applying for jobs. Now let me tell you that I was not picky at all. All I wanted was to get paid to learn game development. I didn't care what project I was on, I didn't care how much they were paying me, I just wanted to get some sort of paycheck while I was able to open up Unity every day. So I applied to a ton of places. I was checking Google and Indeed and LinkedIn, sending out applications everywhere. I had to update my resume, and then after I updated my resume, I sent it to some of my friends and they gave me some really valuable feedback. And then I sent in like 1 million applications. And I don't mean like one-click apply. I mean like sending personalized emails and personalized cover letters whenever I could. And I got 1 million rejections. Here's one. Here's one. Here's one. Here's one. Here's another one. Here's one. Here's one. And I have more, but I didn't want to waste a bunch of time digging through all my old emails. And these are just the rejections that I heard back from. A lot of people I just got ghosted and never heard from. Overall, it was emotionally exhausting. Maybe you've been in this position before. I was constantly refreshing my emails to see if I had anything new in my inbox. I was doing a ton of research on all these individual studios to see what made them unique and why I would want to work for them. I forgot what the third thing was. I was filling out a bunch of online forms, and these forms were just inputting exactly what was already on my resume. And then I would get rejection after rejection. It was not fun. But one day I had a thought that changed my entire mindset. And I think it's a really good secret for getting a job in the games industry. I thought to myself, well, all of these applications that these people are getting are from strangers. I bet game studios would much rather hire from within their network of friends and acquaintances before opening it up to some random person on the internet. So I decided to take matters into my own hands, and I went to the one place where game developers love to hang out, even though it's a complete swamp of toxic negativity: Twitter. or X now, I guess. So here's my hack. Just do a Twitter search of keywords. In my case, it was Unity and hiring. And suddenly I had access to an entire list of real people who were looking for new hires. After that, it was game over. I DM'd somebody and they gave me instructions with how to apply. But this made an enormous difference because when I emailed in my resume, I specifically said, "Hi, I was speaking to so-and-so on Twitter and they recommended that I apply to this position." Automatically, my resume jumped to the top of the stack and it led to me being hired full-time. Why? Because of that personal connection. I realized that I needed to somehow circumvent this giant barrier of professionalism that manifested itself in online forums and non-personal emails. If I can figure out how to reach individual people, I am way better off. It's like that old phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Okay, so I landed this job. So what happened? Guys, let me tell you, it was intimidating. The first project that I was put on, I was the only programmer. And yeah, I'd made a lot of small projects and basic prototypes, but I didn't have the knowledge to do things the right way. Like, I didn't even know what the difference was between a UI image component and a sprite renderer. And suddenly I was in charge of implementing entire new features into this brand new game. It was great. It was exactly what I was looking for. I was learning so much every single day, and I was getting paid to do it. And I had coworkers. If I ever had any questions or didn't know how to do something, I had a group of people that I could go to and they could either give me some direction or point me in the right way to go. And I think that that increased my competence tenfold. So I don't know who you are watching this video. Maybe you're a professional game developer, or maybe you're a hobbyist game developer. Maybe you're somebody who likes playing video games and you have a vague interest in game development. Or maybe you have no interest in game development. If that's you, then I'm really surprised that you made it this far in the video, so thanks. But no matter who you are, if you want to make money by creating video games, then I hope that you will learn from my experience. The best way to make money, the most lucrative path for game developers, is to convince somebody else to pay you to create the games that they want to make. In layman's terms, get a job. If you want to make money by creating video games, then I would recommend that you do what I did. Make yourself employable and find that personal connection that will help you land a job. On a completely unrelated note, if you want to hear about how I recently quit my job to become a solo indie game developer, then you can watch that video right here. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.